And what role Donald Trump now as new US president?
Well, things are very unpredictable and it can go either way. But what we hope as Palestinians, and for saving lives, that this ceasefire becomes a permanent position that would lead us to something bigger. Now, President Trump is a key player. And the USA can do a lot. And we've seen it in the last week. So, but President Trump and the team in the United States need to, again, understand what it means to have Palestinians have a palatable peace process. A palatable peace process means understanding the rights of the Palestinians.
Is it your sense that they care?
Rights. They can if there is enough work from the region, from our brothers and sisters, from the international community, on talking about the durability of a sustainable peace. If you want a sustainable peace, then it has to have parameters that are different than what was thought before on either continuing the status quo in the Middle East or really achieving a sustainable peace.
So what you're saying is we cannot just dust off what was a Kushner plan back in 2020 for a solution to the conflict?
Yes, what was there on the table in 2017, 2018 will not bring us peace. Not for the Palestinians, not for the Israelis, not for the region.
Ayman, how confident are you about getting through this first stage and a push towards a day after deal?
Look, I think we're going to see a bottom-up pressure from the people on both sides to ensure that the ceasefire holds, because you know, we cannot forget the hell it has been last year for everybody. So I think as we see the first stage implemented, I think people are going to see the benefit of sticking to the deal, and I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on the politician. I think it is key that also we understand that there is real misery on the ground in Gaza. So being able to bring into Gaza sufficient aid on scale, in time, is something that's going to be extremely important in creating an environment that would push even harder for the solution, for the ceasefire to hold. In general, I think we got all to learn from the past. We cannot just keep doing what we did before and expect things to go in a different direction. That's not going to happen. Ultimately, we cannot go to pre-October 7 reality, because it is the reality that is the context in which what has happened since then happened. So I think we've got to look at what is it that we can do to make sure that nothing that has happened on and 6 October 7 happens again. And for that, we need to give political horizon. We need to restore hope. We need to navigate through the dehumanization and hatred that has taken root in a much, much deeper way. And we need to offer a solution. I think a key factor here is the new Trump administration. And let's be honest about it. It was the Trump team that pushed the parties across the finish line for the deal. President Trump is saying, I want to be a peacemaker, and that is something on which we're fully aligned, with which we're fully aligned, and we're going to be partners for President Trump in pursuing a peace. We have to understand what would it take to ensure that that peace lasts and is comprehensive and it's just and it is fair and it is peace between people, not just official documents signed. And for that to happen, people have to accept it. And for people to accept it, it has to address the legitimate rights of Palestinians, one last thing, for freedom and statehood, and also address Israel's concern about security and positioning in the region. I think we can do that. We have enough solutions that have been put on the table. As I told you before, Becky, we're not short on ideas, we're short on will. Are we going to garner that will and act together collectively in the region, in Europe, in the United States, across the world, and take advantage of the new spirit of hope that we see in the whole region, in Lebanon, in Syria, and other places?
I was in Doha on the announcement of the ceasefire. Steve Witkoff was there. He was in the room with the Prime Minister of Qatar. He clearly has a very good relationship with him. As we understand it, he may go into Gaza to try and ensure the implementation of at least this sort of second stage of the first phase, as it were. But Donald Trump has already said he isn't confident that this deal will hold, this truce will hold. Does that worry you?
Look, I mean, there is a chance it will not hold. We're already seeing some signs of failure to commit to what was agreed on in the deal. But I think it is in everybody's interest that the deal holds. I think we have an opportunity in which we can build. And if it doesn't hold, then what's the alternative? And as we talk about Gaza and the risk of the ceasefire not holding, which is dragging not just Gaza into hell again, but dragging the whole region into the anxiety and uncertainty and chaos that we've seen, there is also the West Bank on which we need to keep an eye. What's happening with the West Bank is extremely dangerous. As Gaza sort of witnesses a degree of end of fighting, we don't want to see that fighting on the West Bank leading to explosion, because if it does, then we'll find ourselves in the same place. What I want to say is that I think history has proven that security approach will not solve the problem. How many years, decades, has Israel relied on security approaches to ensure that there's no re-eruption, and it did not work. So now I think I go back to what John Noel said. We need a political solution. We need a political vision. We can all rally around it in a very pragmatic, practical way, and anchor it in an understanding that in order for the peace to hold, to be real, all sides have to feel that they've gotten their legitimate rights fulfilled. And that's something to which in the region, in Europe, and I think everywhere else, we're fully committed.
You and I have been talking on an almost daily basis over the last 18 months about your concerns about the conflict in Gaza metastasizing. It's been, it's been really sort of, good to see what's happened in Lebanon, what's happened in Syria. We're going to find out from you, Fuad, what the perspective is from Baghdad. But I see where you're at on what's going on in the West Bank at present. And Faisal, let me just bring you back in here before I get to everybody else. Despite, or maybe because of the ceasefire, Israel has launched a significant operation in the West Bank, particularly in Jenin. Are these acts, to your mind, meant to further undermine the PA in the eyes of the Palestinians on the West Bank? Seen by some, the PA is seen by some as collaborators with Israel at present, just as conversations about what the day after in Gaza might look like. What's your sense?
I think what is happening in Jenin is very unfortunate, and it's a deliberate attempt by Israel to undermine the Palestinians in general, and we're hearing it. They don't shy away from voicing it. They're telling us very clearly, we're done with Gaza for the time being. We don't know for how long, because they are also voicing that they are going back into Gaza. But now it's a time on the West Bank, and we will do on the West Bank what we have done on the Gaza Strip. And this is very worrying for the Palestinians. The Palestinian Authority was trying to contain the violence on the West Bank, but now the Israelis come in and they certainly undermine everything the Palestinian Authority was doing.
Asad, I'm going to bring you in here at this point. I think it's important that we don't park the Gaza story, clearly don't park the Israel-Palestine conflict, and don't park any conversations we might want to have about the day after at this point. But Asad, you are here, Minister, in Davos for the first time, representing a transitional government in Damascus. It says it has come to power for all Syrians and for a new Syria. What does the international community, especially the new Trump administration, need to do to support this government? And how do you guarantee to Syrians and the international community, from whom you are expecting a great deal of help, that you are willing to work both internally and around the region to help ensure security?
Yes, thank you. First of all, what's happened in Syria, we are now in 50 days. We bring the hope for all the Syrian people, and also we bring the hope for all the world and for the region. And we were bombed and tortured and displaced during 14 years. And what happened, of course, it brings stability and security for Syria and for all the region and the world. Of course, what we are looking for from the Trump administration that to support the stability and security by removing the sanctions imposed on the Syrian people, and also all the Syrian people has positive expectation from the new administration regarding the supporting the political process and also supporting the new road and new future of the Syria.
So, Minister, let me stop you there. How much contact have you had with this new administration? Clearly, it's only 4 days old, but I mean, it's been, you know, in a stage of transition now for a couple of months. And how realistic do you believe it will be that some, if not all, sanctions will be lifted?
Yes, the sanctions now, it's turned into against the Syrian people. In the past, the sanctions imposed against the Assad regime because of the torturing people inside Naya and other prisoners. But after the overthrow of the Assad regime, it turned against the Syrian people. But now, removing sanctions, it's the key actor and the key of our development vision, and also the key for a new road for the Syrian people.
What contact have you had with the members of the new administration, if any? Have you been in contact?
Yes. Yes. Of
what
course,
are they telling
Syria,
you?
it's important actor in the region, and who want to perceive the stability and security in the region, they should talk with Damascus.
Have they been in contact with you?
Yes.
Yes. Can you give us any sense of what's been said?
No.
Fair enough. Let me bring Minister Fuad Hussein in at this point. I'm coming back to you. You've been instrumental in navigating Iraq through complex regional dynamics, advocating for national sovereignty and for regional cooperation. What is your view about what is going on in Syria? What danger do you believe there is in any instability that there may be there spilling over into your country? And again, what's your perception of where the Trump administration's policy will lie in the Middle East going forward? I mean, you will need to speak to the new Trump administration. You will need to talk about US troops in Iraq. What's your sense?
Let me first mention that the Syrian security and Iraqi security are very much interlinked. And that has to do with the past, but also the current situations. And we had good discussion with my colleague Asad about the security situation inside Syria, but also security situation inside Iraq, and the point which we have mentioned, or the subject which we discussed, had to do with the ISIS fighters inside Syria. In fact, we have seen that ISIS territory has been extended inside Syria. ISIS fighters and terrorist fighters, they were able to control more weapons because of the fact that Syrian army collapsed. So they collected a lot of weapons, and some new elements joined ISIS. That's according to our information. And the ISIS terrorist fighters, they are on our border as well as on the border with Jordan. So that point is worrying us, and I guess it is worrying also our friends in Damascus. We need a kind of cooperation, how to deal with this threat, because the threat, it is true, they are on the other side of the border, but they have got also their people inside Iraq. So that is one of the issues. The other issue is, of course, as we mentioned many times, stability in Syria. It will be in the benefit of the Iraqi people and Iraqis. So we hope that, and we respect the will and wishes of the Syrian people, but at the same time, this new situation, the current situation in Syria, it needs cooperation and with various countries, and Iraq is included. We are ready to cooperate with the new administration in Syria, and we hope that they will have some steps towards establishing a political process, and the political process which we are talking about has to do with the with the being inclusive. And when we are talking about inclusive, we are talking about the various components in Syrian society, because at the end, stability, it means stability in all parts of Syria. Stability, it means stability for all components in Syria.
And let's talk about northern
Syria.
Syria.
We are not talking about only about Damascus. I am talking about various areas in Syria.
Yeah, and let's talk about northern Syria. We know the US-backed Kurdish forces in northern Syria are under increasing pressure at present from Turkey. Do you think Ankara will launch an offensive against these groups? And if they do, what is your positioning on this?
No, that will be dangerous. Why? For many reasons. In the first place, if there will be an attack on that area, so we are talking about, I guess, 20% of the Syrian area, which is under the control of Syrian Democratic Forces. Fighting in that area, it means more refugees coming to Iraq. We have got now 250,000 refugees from Syria, but in fact, these are registered. But in fact, we have got perhaps 700,000 Syrians in Iraq. So that means more refugees inside Iraq. Fighting in that area, it will threaten the prisons in that area. As it is well known, there are 26 prisons in that area, which is under control of the Syrian Democratic Forces. And in these prisons, we have got between 10 to 12,000 terrorists from ISIS and Al-Qaeda there. So imagine if those will be free or they will be released. Many of them, they are Iraqis. The others, they are Syrian and from other nationalities. What does it mean for ISIS, and what does it mean for the security in Iraq? And in fact, what does it mean for Syrian security? So there are many threats in that area. So that's why we hope that there will be negotiation. There were some contacts and discussion between Syrian Democratic Forces leaders and
do you expect
HTS leaders, but we hope that these negotiations, the process of negotiations will continue and they will reach some understanding.
Do you expect the brokered deal to withdraw US troops from Iraq will continue under this Trump administration? And at present, as we wait to see whether Donald Trump will broker his own deal on and with Iran, what's your perspective of how you might re-navigate your relations with Tehran?
And
2 questions.
It was a question for me. You see the first part of your question, how the new administration in Washington is going to deal with the U.S. troops in that area and in other areas. Of course, this is a question for the American to answer. But I think my belief is that they will be there. They will be there because the whole entire situation in Middle East is different than the first, let's say, Trump first administration. Now we are dealing with different challenges. And so I have the feeling that they will be in the area. And as for our relationship with the new administration, our relationship with the American government, American administration is based on the strategical agreement which we have. And on the basis of that framework, we will continue our talks and negotiation with the American side on various fields.
And with Tehran?
As for Tehran, of course, that is a question to the Iranian. But the tension between Washington and Tehran, it affects us directly. Not indirectly, in fact. That's why we are rather worried about the tension, and we hope that both sides will choose different approach, and that's the approach of, once again, negotiating. But until now, I don't see any signal from Washington that they are ready to negotiate with the Iranian side, while the Iranians are giving that signal.
Well, let's see. I mean, there's a chief deal maker who says that he wants to cut deals all over the place. So let's see how long it is before we start seeing the emergence of something on Tehran, if at all. Minister Barrot, let me bring you in here. I gave you a chance to sort of, give us a starter for 10 earlier on. So having listened to what we've heard from the panellists here, can you just share your assessment of where you see Gaza, perhaps more importantly, your perspective on the developments in Lebanon, and how France plans to support that government going forward. And then critics say that European countries don't have the political will or capital to chart their own foreign policy goals separate from Washington. What do you say to those critics when it comes to Syria, Lebanon, Iran, in a Trump era 2.0?
So first I say that this is not true, even though, of course, for all of us, the US are a key partner, but we're sovereign in our foreign affairs policy. And even though we constantly talk one with another, and we often agree, it sometimes happens that we don't are exactly aligned, but this doesn't prevent us from working together. Why do European countries care about what's happening in the Middle East, about the temperature in the Middle East? Well, because our national interests are indexed on the temperature in the Middle East. Among the key preoccupations of European citizens today is security and terrorism. And as far as France is concerned, 10 years ago, there was a massive terrorist attack that was initially prepared in Syria under the regime of Bashar al-Assad and by ISIS forces. At the moment when there are being a lot of talks in Europe about migration, well, these talks, they initiated in 2015 when the Syrian people, by millions, they fled from Syria, they fled the regime of Bashar al-Assad, and they found asylum in Turkey, in Jordan, in Lebanon, but also in Europe. So everything that happens in the Middle East, because we have the Mediterranean in common, so to speak, is of great interest to us. And that's why we see ourselves as partners in good times as in bad times. And I want to remind people here that France hosted the first humanitarian conference in Gaza 1 month after the 7th of October. And France also hosted the first international conference in support to Lebanon 1 month after the ground operations of Israel into Lebanon started. And now that we've achieved ceasefire, and get back to that, alongside with countries of the region, Arab countries, countries for the Gulf, we are willing to participate, whether it's Gaza, Lebanon, or Syria, in the reconstruction of those countries and to consolidate the political solutions that will go alongside those reconstruction efforts. As far as Gaza is concerned, it's been said already, it's a huge relief that there is a ceasefire that puts an end to the brute force that destroyed a huge part of Gaza, that made so many civilian deaths, and that allowed the partial release of hostages, and we're waiting desperately for the release of our 2 French hostages, hopefully in the weeks to come. Phase 2 will be challenging, because we'll need to find a way for a civil administration of Gaza once Israel troops retrieve, and we'll need to start working on the 3rd step, which is the political solution that Ayman alluded to. And we're already working with Saudi Arabia and partners from the region ahead of the UN International Conference that will be held in June of 2025 in New York and co-chaired by Saudi Arabia and France.
What does France bring to the table? What's the offer?
Well, France is a permanent member of the Security Council, dedicated to to justice and international law.
Very specifically, I'm asking, what are you putting on the table in Gaza and for Gaza?
Oh, so depending on which stage you have in mind, like I said, we helped alongside, and I want to commend especially the efforts of Jordan to bring humanitarian help into Gaza, but we also help foster humanitarian help among European countries. During this international conference that we hosted, We're also in the front line to support the Palestinian Authority. We're one of the rare countries in the world to directly support the Palestinian Authority. And moving forward, we'll be here alongside countries in the region to try and solidify this political solution. We have not yet recognized the state of Palestine because we've said that this recognition needs to come at a time when indeed we get closer to the draft of a two-state solution with mutual recognition and security guarantee.
That's not going to happen before June. So, I mean,
we're going to work hard
from that.
We're going to work hard for this June conference to be a decisive step towards an irreversible path towards the two-state solution. And as far as Lebanon is concerned, what do we bring? Well, in Lebanon, we bring our long-lasting relationship with Lebanon that allowed us, alongside the US, to provide a formula for a ceasefire that happened 60 days ago. And that produced and that delivered results. With the mechanism that we put in place with the US, we've been able to operate or to trigger the first retreats of Israeli forces in the south of Lebanon and to push the Lebanese armed forces, supported by the UNIFIL UN mission, to operate the disarmament of Hezbollah in the south of Lebanon. We're 60 days past the ceasefire. Are we done? The answer is no. So we'll need more time to achieve the results. The good thing is that we also, alongside partners of the quintet, facilitated the election of a president for Lebanon. That was an essential condition to be met for the ceasefire to be sustainable, but also for the reconstruction effort to start, and basically for Lebanon or for the Lebanese people to take back control over their own destiny. But as was said earlier in the introduction, what worked in Lebanon is that everyone took their share of the risk of the effort. Israel put an end to hostilities and now is removing its forces. The Lebanese armed forces went beyond what they had done so far and went actually to places where Hezbollah were storing ammunitions and destroyed those ammunitions. And UNIFIL also did their part. Right. And the Lebanese political forces also sort of overcame their reluctance to work together to elect a president. So everybody did their part. That's why we're where we are now. But to do the other half of the way, we need people to keep taking their part of the risk.
Ayman.
Thank you. Look, I think the first reality we have to recognize is that everything in the Middle East is connected. Whether you talk about Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, all come together in terms of what causes tension to happen and the impact of positive progress. Number two, what happens in the Middle East does have a major impact on our neighbors in Europe. We are one region in reality, and we've seen that manifested through the impact of crises that we've had to live with. And I go back to my initial statement. There is a moment of opportunity if everybody do what they need to do to make sure that we are on a track that will give people hope of a promise of a better future where their legitimate concerns will be addressed. So, on Palestine, Gaza. Gaza, I said there's a ceasefire now. Everybody has an interest in that ceasefire holding. But remember, the challenges are enormous. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza who lost literally everything. Their homes, their schools, their hospitals, their neighborhoods, everything. So unless we come in together in a massive effort to start addressing those immediate needs, I think we're going to have suffered a tremendous failure as an international community. So we've got to do that. Number two, we need to watch the West Bank, and what's happening in the West Bank should not be allowed to lead to what has happened in Gaza. I.e., we cannot afford another war on the West Bank.
This is a national security issue.
This is a national security issue for Jordan, and it's also, I mean, a matter of grave security concerns for the whole region and the whole world. Yeah. So, again, what do we need to do? I think everybody knows what needs to be done. Let's think of a solution which will address the legitimate rights of both people. What is that solution? I think the majority of the world agree that the two-state solution is the answer. In the past, that solution has been paid much lip service, but no real action. On the grounds, we're seeing unilateral measures by Israel that rendering the two-state solution unviable. expansion of settlements, land grabs, suffocation of the PA. That is not conducive to peace. And I think, yes, Netanyahu government could speak of some military victories, but I think what we need to do is to think long-term. How do we create a Middle East in which everybody is safe and secure? You're not going to do that by security. You only do that by a political solution, and that's why I agree completely with John. Well, we need to have a plan to implement the two-state solution.
Let me just put this to you, because I do want to bring everybody back in. I mean, you know, the West Bank is a national security issue to you. Syria has been a national security issue to you. And so let me just follow up here. Jordan's been providing refuge to displaced Syrians now for a long time, while also having to deal with the captagon-fueled drug trade that really enriched the Assad regime. How hopeful are you about the current situation in Syria? And what are you doing very specifically to support the transitional government at this point?
Absolutely. Just one last sentence on the West Bank and Gaza, if I may, is that I think with the Trump administration, with the involvement of Europe, with a leading regional role, as you alluded to, yes, we want to have a leading role in addressing the crises of our region. But that doesn't mean we don't need our partners and friends in the rest of the world. So we can complement each other. We will do the heavy lifting, and we need our partners to support. On Syria, look, I mean, again, as you mentioned, Jordan has been in the middle of all the crises. I mean, we've been at the receiving end of every crisis in the region. With Syria, we suffered in the past, not only in terms of drug trafficking, weapon trafficking, we've suffered economically. So now we have a new era, and I do want to believe, and I believe that the new administration in Syria, after coming to shoulder this responsibility, knowing the pain and suffering that their people have gone through, I do believe that they want to succeed, and I do believe that they know that in order for them to succeed, they need to win the trust of their people, and they need to win the trust of the region and the international community. That is, you know, to put it simply. So I think we have engaged very deeply with our Syrian brothers from the day go. We've had very, very good conversations. We have a lot of interests that are aligned. Now, terrorism is one common threat, and as Fuad said, we see Daesh rearming, regrouping. They've acquired a lot of weapons from the stockpiles of the Syrian army. That's a challenge to all of us, and we're already in discussion on how do we deal with that threat, not just among us, but also with our partners in Europe and the States, because that's a collective thing. Number two, drug trafficking is still happening to Jordan, and that's a tremendous challenge. But again, we're in discussion with our brothers in the new administration, and we have the same interest here in ending that threat, because it is a threat to both of us. What we have to remember, though, is that I think we owe it to the new administration to be a little bit patient. They've just taken their responsibility. It's an enormous task to run a country that has been really broken down.
Yeah, but how long are you going to give them? How long do you think the region is going to give Syria? How much support will they get, and how long will they be given?
Look, we're very supportive. As you said, we have 386 kilometers of border with Syria. We're working together and making sure there's a flow of trade, a flow of connecting infrastructure, electricity, gas, flow of aid. All that is happening. We've also had very good meetings. We decided to form committees not just on trade and other issues, but also on security and defense, water issue. The Syrian regime violated our water rights. But then again, we're patient. We're not going to push our friends now and say we have to solve it. We've got to give them time. But I think, and we have this conversation in full honesty, because look, we have an interest in Syria succeeding, not just because we care about Syria, which we do, but because what happens in Syria will have a direct impact on us. If Syria succeeds, we all benefit. If Syria, God forbid, collapse into chaos, we will pay the price probably more than anybody else. So that said, I think they are saying the right things, as I said. I mean, they want an all-inclusive government that represents and fairly protects the rights of all citizens. They need to build the states, and we are fully supportive to them. I think they know the urgency of moving forward more than anybody else, and we're there to support
Minister,
them.
how would you describe the support that you're getting very specifically at present from Qatar and Turkey? What is the influence? What are you being told from Riyadh?
Yes.
Who's offering what at this stage?
Yes.
More than just we hope we will help, as long as the new government looks like it's inclusive and it's going to work.
Yes, if you are interested in the Middle East, you can't ignore the importance of Syria. And if you want also to take authority of Syrian government, you can't ignore the concern of neighborhood. You understand our location and also understand the neighborhood concerns. What we have been told in Riyadh and in all of our meetings in Damascus and abroad that all the countries are interested in Syria and they wish to Syria to be stable and secure, because the stability and the security of Syria, it will be its impact on the region. Of course, the infrastructure is destroyed by the Assad regime, and we understand the challenges, and we give the world a high expectation from our fast overthrow of Assad regime in 12 days, and we understand this, but the world also should be patient for us. Now we are just in 50 days, and of course we need a brilliant and a very good example of a new Syria, but we need also the support of international community and our country in our region.
You and I were at the same supper the other night with Javad Zarif, who wished the new Syrian leadership a lot of success.
Yes,
and this was his view, not perhaps a view from Tehran, but this was Zarif's view. He sort of overlooked the influence that Iran has had through its proxy Hezbollah, although he wouldn't admit to that, in supporting Assad in the past. But he certainly wished you the best. I wonder, how much are you prepared to have relations with Iran, if at all? What is your perception about where Syria should position itself with regard Iran at present? And to Minister Barrot, France, the UK and Germany have recently held talks with Iran aimed at potentially reviving the Iran nuclear deal. Javad Zarif told me at this same supper that Tehran is willing to engage with the new Trump administration, but insists that Washington must purchase its ticket back at the negotiating table, and he very specifically said the price has gone up. To which you say what? Let me start with you, and I'll come back to you, Assad. Let's start with Minister Barrot.
No, so earlier in the conversation, in the introduction, when you were speaking about the temperature itself generally, because we were seeing that there are different situations, even though they're all interconnected, and if the temperature seemed to have gone down across countries, is also because the main source of temperature and instability has kind of broken down, and this is the Iran so-called axis of resistance.
Some will argue that Israel is also a reason for why we have had such significant temperature increases
well, you know,
across the region. But anyway, I understand your point.
The very significant temperature increase over the past 2 years is the 7th of October that Iran supported, and the 8th of October regarding Lebanon, which is the attacks of Hezbollah against the north of Israel. Yeah. No, this does not sort of preclude Israel and its responsibilities, but the fact is that the axis of resistance has largely broken down. With respect to Iran, again, a topic that we're clearly going to keep working on very closely, because it touches upon our own security interests. The nuclear program would generate massive security issues for Europe and the rest of the world. The ballistic program of Iran now generates direct security concern for some European countries. And that's why we've expressed to Iran with the British and the German partners of the E3 our willingness to move forward with tough negotiation that start with a full assessment that we requested from the Board of Governors of IAEA, and that will be presented early in the spring.
Is it
and
your
that will
sense
be a point or a starting point for decisions to come.
Is it your sense that the Foreign Minister has been given the green light by the Supreme Leader to negotiate a deal with the US? First question, because my sense was from Zarif that actually indeed is the case. To you, Fuad, I wonder whether you have been asked to or would be prepared to mediate in any US Tehran negotiations on a new deal. And overall, to the whole panel here, What are your hopes and fears for the Trump administration's policy towards Iran going forward? Just how important is it?
Listen, I hope he got a mandate, because he has a mandate to negotiate with us. And in fact, I think this is the rational approach, because if it's not going to be a negotiation, incorporating nuclear program, ballistic program, and regional aspects, then what's the alternative? The alternative is back to brute force. And brute force is unlikely to generate any positive solutions either for the region, for Iran themselves, but even for us, Europe and the US, because it's unlikely that we can sort all the problems caused by these nuclear and ballistic programs by brute force only.
Fuad,
it is well known that we are well connected to Washington, but also to Tehran. So if we will be asked to mediate, we will do that. And it will be in the interest of Iraq, but also in interest of the region and international, in the interest of international peace. We have been asked in the past during Biden administration to mediate, and we did it. In fact, I can say that now, because it is part of the history. We organized the last meeting between the Iranian side and the American in New York. It was through us that we approached the American side and the Iranian, and they had their meeting
the
in New York.
between Saudi and Iran, of course. So I mean, there's clearly a Riyadh opportunity for mediating this time.
Riyadh and Tehran. It was in Iraq that we have all these meetings, and we were also between Tehran and many other countries, by the way.
We're out of time, so I'm just going to literally ask you all, do you have confidence that whilst it is clear that what Donald Trump's policy towards the Middle East is going forward will have huge consequences for the region, are you confident that the region, and again I bring in Dateline Riyadh, Dateline Abu Dhabi, Dateline Doha and the rest, you know, this new era, this new dynamic of regional solutions for regional problems. I mean, I don't know anybody who shuttles around the region more than you do. As you felt cautiously optimistic about the lowering of the temperature across this region, what role the region for its own backyard?
Look, we're trying everything we can. I think we're offering solutions, I think, on the premise of a very clear policy objective, which is to ensure peace and stability and therefore prosperity for our peoples. That is the objective. And to achieve that objective, I think we need to put everything on the table very openly, very frankly. Palestinian-Israeli conflict is key. Unless we solve it, instability will continue to hover on our future. The key to solving that is two-state solution that fulfills the right of all. I think for Iran, the stakes are too high. And again, as John well said, military solutions do not solve issues. They only lead to more conflicts, particularly if the root cause of conflicts are not addressed. And Iran needs to appreciate there's a new dynamic in the region now, which means that everybody's got to play by the rules and no meddling in the affairs of other countries and respecting for their rights. I think Syria, we've got to all rally behind the new administration to make sure that the support as they also do what's right for their people and rebuild and respect the rights of all. Lebanon needs the support. Terrorism is a new threat that we all have to keep our eyes on, and we need to work on that. So I think in the region, we're ready to do the heavy lifting to solve the crisis of our region. We need our partners, but I think we do need the understanding from our partners that we know our region well, we know what it takes to achieve peace, and we need to be given the space to offer our solutions and to be listened to and not talked at as we approach those challenges.
It's been a pleasure. I mean, 24, 48 hours before the next stage of the first phase of the release of hostages in Gaza, the release of Palestinian prisoners in exchange, and the further surge in humanitarian aid. I guess I speak for this room when I say, you know, we all hope that this is going to work. I think if we can see progress, it seems to me, as we've been discussing, that if we can see progress on the ground in Gaza, that can cascade into better atmosphere for at least, you know, a process for a solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and all of this cascades, of course, through the region. It is a busy region. It is all interconnected. 45 minutes is not anything long enough, but as Fuad said, he spent 45 years trying to lower the temperature in the Middle East. So, I mean, we were only going to skate across the surface, but it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed, and welcome to the Davos for you. Thank you.